Okay, good, thank you. I mean, I want to do a basic presentation, but the ISP was founded a little over 30 years ago. It was a collaboration of all three branches of government. We had the legislature funding it, we had the executive branch asking for it, and it was eventually put under the judiciary. Now, the executive branch, the whole purpose of ISP at the time was to reduce prison overcrowding. So at the time we started, we put together a whole process for bringing people on board, and at the time, sorry, there's a little delay. So I get a little impatient. But at the time, we had prisons were overcrowded. We had about 25 applicants for every single position in ISP. Things are different now. Now you have some of our participants have 2, 3 shots of probation, maybe a shot at drug court. So by the time they get into state prison, they're not the folks that we were looking for 30 years ago. Right? So what we do is we still have a screening program where we try and match our participants with our program. It's highly structured. It's a vigorous form of community supervision with a lot of client contact. It's not like probation. I spent 6 years here on Monmouth probation as the assistant chief. We would see people maybe once a month, maybe twice a month. For our sex offenders, maybe 4 times a month, but there wasn't extensive customer contact. In ISP, we see our clients 4 times a week. We drug test some of them 2, 3, 4 times a week. So we have extensive contact. We view it as prison without walls, and we try to make it as rigorous as that. So we will do 2 or 3 times a week the drug testing. We also are not permitted to drink alcohol, so we'll do breathalyzers as well as urine tests for alcohol. And we will sanction folks who have beer on Sunday. And I'm a Jet fan, so believe me, I understand why some people would drink on Sundays. But anyway, I know that from my Jet. At least I'm not a Giant fan. When we're doing our application process, and after I do this presentation, it's a short presentation, we'll talk about the actual process, and I think that's where some folks have a lot of questions, because they get a lot of calls from attorneys trying to get reconsideration for some of their clients who are accepted in the program. So maybe we'll talk a little bit more on that. If you have my handout that I left out front, it has a couple of pages past the presentation that we'll talk about. But anyway, in our process, we will seek comments from the sentencing judge, in certain cases from the prosecutor. If the client was previously on probation, we'll reach out to the probation officers and parole officers who supervise them. We'll also take a look at the pre-sentence report from when they were originally sentenced. So we factor in all of those things into our application process. One of the major tenets of our program is full-time employment. You know, I learned many things from the Sisters of St. Joseph of Brooklyn. One was how to take a punch without getting knocked out. And 2 was idle hands find mission. My nut jokes usually work a lot better than that. But idle hands find mischief. And so we make sure that all our clients are employed all the time. Judge Grant always kids me. He says, your employment numbers are bogus. I said, no, they're not. If you don't work, we'll send you back. So well, how come probation is 57% and 95%? Because we'll send you back if you don't work. In probation, they'll say, okay, when you come back next month to see me, make sure you have some applications filled out. If you're not working for us, we'll give you a couple of weeks. If you don't have a job then, we'll take you on job interviews. If you don't have a job then, well, you may be going to Kintop for a while to think about not finding a job. And then eventually, if you don't find a job, we'll send you back to the state prison. You know,
everybody checks criminal records.
Sure. And we're upfront with it when our employees go, when our participants go and look for work. We put that right out there. Sometimes it's an impediment, oftentimes it is. But even in probation, everyone there has a record, it's still 57% there, and we're at 95. We force people to take jobs that they may not think they're suitable for, but they have to work. I mean, we have some disbarred attorneys, we have some chiropractors. They're not looking to work at McDonald's, but if they can't find anything else, they don't. They can't not work. So We look for full-time employment. We also do, there's a 16 hours of community service each month. Now, we'll waive some of these things if the person's a full-time college student, we're back off on the community service, we'll still make it work part-time, but we won't, you know, we're not gonna force them not to go to school, that's kind of productive. Although some of my regional managers I had to explain that to them. I want people to go to school as well, because that's an opportunity for a better job. Oftentimes, our clients have never had any responsibility of their own. And unfortunately, I saw this funny story. I sent my daughter to go to the dentist or something, and I gave her a check, and I forgot to fill it out. I realized my 21-year-old daughter has never written a check in her whole life. They use debit cards now. So the receptionist had to teach her how to write a check. Well, our clients are even worse than that, I hope. That they have never done a budget, never thought about what they like to do. We force them to write a diary and a budget to try to take a look at what they're thinking, how they're thinking, what they're doing with their money. We also want to make sure we can account for all the money that's coming in and they're not generating income in some nefarious way that we don't know about. So we require them to also do treatment. One of the benefits we have when a program as successful as drug court is, I remember when I ran Monmouth Drug Court as the manager here, we were always jockeying around trying to get people treatment, who accepts Medicaid, who accepts insurance, who has a sliding scale. I'm happy to say at ISP we have a budget. And although we do sign up as many people as we can for Obamacare, in the end, we'll pay for treatment. So people will get the treatment they need. And we do a lot of treatment. We do a lot of evaluations up front. Usually mental health is always ordered. Substance abuse evaluation is always ordered. And we will, based on those evaluations, we'll send people to treatment, and if need be, we'll pay for it. So I think that's one of the advantages of our program. One of the things we also look for is, one of our conditions of ISP is that they support their families. So if you have child support obligations, we're going to make sure that you are paying attention to that. And the whole point of our program is to reduce the number of offenders in state prisons. Let the corrections people deal with the more complex prisoners, and we're cheaper, basically. And I'll show you some statistics on the costs associated with ISP versus prison in a few minutes. So what do we have? We have curfews. Starts off at 6 p.m. Again, the idle hands, which is my version of the broken windows theory that I might be deemed to develop. Must adhere to the imposed curfew. If you're not there at 6 o'clock, we'll do on-site, we'll come and visit you, we'll call you on the phone, because we don't allow people to have landlines with call forwarding or caller ID, so we call, you have to be there, and we'll show up. You have to remain drug and alcohol free. Now, we're not going to send anybody back for a relapse, 1 time, 2 times. We're going to work with you, we're going to get you treatment, but we will monitor and sanction every time you drink alcohol or test positive for drugs. Most of our folks will come in and immediately fess up, because they know that the penalty is always worse if you deny it. One of the important things is the relationship that develops between our offices. Very tight. We see them 4 times a week. So if you come to us and say, hey, listen, I had a beer, the Jets got their butts kicked, I had 2 beers, we'll work with you. If you lie about having a beer, we're going to give you a bigger sanction. Trust is everything, and being truthful is what we're trying to teach them to be good citizens. So we're not going to take lying. Have to maintain employment, have to do their community service, must attend their treatment. All of these reasons are program violations, and we will send them back. You know, when I ran probation here, the biggest reason for a violation of probation is new charges. Oddly enough with us, the biggest reason is program violations. We don't get a lot of new charges. We get some, but we get mostly program violations. So we're very strict. We will send you back. Sir?
What kind of sanctions?
The sanctions could be, have to write us a report. You're going to go to jail for a couple of days. You're going to do extra community service. We'll cut back your curfew, back to 6 o'clock from 9 o'clock. Maybe you do, so we let you go out till 9. And the jail sanction's a big one. Worst case, we'll violate you, let the judges yell at you. We have a couple of old-time cranky judges that really do a good job in giving them a good scare, as we should say in work. So those are the kinds of sanctions we will use, and ultimately back to state prison. And most important for us, a lot of times, we get 2 kinds of clients for the most part. We'll get people with serious drug addictions, and then we'll get some thieves. And oftentimes, oftentimes, some of the people with theft charges have huge restitution amount. So we will work very hard in getting both sides of that coin to pay their restitution and fines and penalties. So we concentrate on that, but we know if you come into our program for 2 years, 18 months, and you have $250,000 in restitution because you're involved in Medicaid fraud, and we won't let you be a chiropractor anymore, we know you're not going to pay that alone. But you're going to work 2 jobs, full-time and part-time, and make payments to that restitution the whole time.
On those cases, don't you end up extending ISP to 5 years or something?
We can extend it, we can also, if a person has been a good payer and has cooperated and done everything, we will just do a civil judgment and continue to collect it, even though they're off ISP. We will extend them sometimes more than others. All of this is redundant. I tried to clean it up. It's down from 48 slides to 24, but it's still not what we want. Again, strict curfews, home confinements. We do electronic monitoring all the time. I did a study as part of for criminal justice reform for Judge Grant about electronic monitoring. Probation monitors less than 1% of their population. At any given time, we have about 8-10% of our clients that are on some form of electronic monitoring, including a new one that we're using. We used it in drug program. I was here, Scram, which is the bracelet. It's an EM bracelet that also will check you for alcohol use. So if we have someone with a serious alcohol problem, we can throw a bracelet on them, and it reports alcohol through their perspiration in their ankle. It will report back to us that the person has drank. So we'll use that. So we do EM all the time. Again, violating the program is going to lead to temporary custody or ultimately back to state prison. Again, must maintain full-time employment and must make financial obligation payments. You know, we're dealing with oftentimes clients with mental health issues, with drug addiction. So we are also focused on recovery. I think drug court is probably more focused on the recovery aspect of it. We consider recovery a major part of ours, but we also do some other things. But we will send people, we'll have 90 meetings in 90 days type thing. We'll send them to Gamblers Anonymous. We'll do whatever the evaluations tell us our clients need to survive and to stay drug-free or crime-free. We also have many programs that we do in-house. For example, again, we have some very educated people that are participants in ISP. And as their community service, we may make them run a GED program for some of our less educated clients, where they go in there teaching them some math, teaching them whatever it is they need to pass their GED exam. So that's their community service, and we get some free services, and some of our clients who need some things like GED will get them. Some of our offices run those out. We have a men's group, a women's group. We don't have a lot of ladies, but we have quite a few. But we have a men's group, and we talk about things that are specific to men, and we have ladies groups specific to ladies. Many of our kids don't go, our participants are not highly educated, some are, some aren't. Many of them don't have the greatest cognitive skills, so we try to work on those when we can. Okay. We like to tout a low recidivism rate, 17.6% on the last study done. Now that's defined as having not been convicted of an indictable in the 3 years after you graduate from our program. As someone pointed out the last time I did the presentation, that 17% of the half of the people that we don't send back. So yeah, I know how, we all know how statistics can be played, but basically if you graduate from our program, you will not be convicted of an indictable offense for 3 years after the program, except at 17.6%. That's the best we have. They may change that definition of recidivism. I think the legislation just mandated that the judiciary perform another study. So.
And how many actually graduate percentage-wise from the program?
We send back 50%. So and most of those are program violations. Some are just unsuitable, won't cooperate. Some might have some new charges, but the vast majority of them just either won't or can't cooperate with the program.
Did you say 1.5 or 5?
5-0. Not 15%, yeah, I probably will look for the work. I can see, when I first came here a year ago, I'm here a year, I thought 50% was bad, but people in the area tell me it's not so bad. But it's mediocre to me. It's like being a Jet fan, being a native. Compared to state imprisonment, we're a lot cheaper. These numbers are fairly fresh. I think the 44,600 I took from the budget hearings in April when DOC put, I think they have $1 billion budget. It took the average of the prison population over a 12-month period. I think I mentioned it was 22,000, whatever the number was. Divided it, came up with 44,600, a little bit more than that. And we take our salaries in my budget, which is $17 million, divided by our average number of participants in the year, 1,200, and you come up with 14,788. So if you extrapolate that, we like to tout that in 35 years, we save the state $643 million in 40 prison costs, which unfortunately doesn't make up for the shortfall in pensions or the medical benefits of those state workers, but it's a start. Only in government is $643 million, a small number. If you take a look at our community service and multiply it by the minimum wage, I'm sorry, next slide. This slide is we actually collected in restitution, fines, fees, and penalties, $47 million over that time period. So paying back your fees is very important to the success of our program. Where possible, we'll make you pay every dollar. Where it's not possible, we'll put you on a path to at least make steady payments. Since its inception, we've done about 4.5 million hours of community service. If you multiply that by the minimum wage at the time, it's about $31 million in services that we're giving to various communities as a result of ISP participants. So we save money. That's why we have no problem getting funding every year. You know, when they go before the budget, they say, ISP. Well, ISP costs this. Oh, okay, next, let's go to drug court. That's sexier anyway. ISP is a 2-minute conversation during the budget process, because we save money. So, arguably, anyway, we have no problem getting out. We only have a problem getting additional money, not any budget. So our office is unlike probation. You work probation, you work Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, maybe 7 o'clock on one day a week. You go out in the field maybe a few hours a week. We spend about 80% of our time in the field. If you go to any one of my regional offices, it's a ghost town. You have 3 clerical staffers there, maybe a supervisor, and all the officers are out in the field. We all have state cars, state gas, so the expectation is you're going to be out there with your participants. You're going to go see them at work, you're going to see them at the treatment facility, you're going to see them at home, and you're going to see them if they're hanging out on the corner. So wherever they are, we're going to go to them and see them. It's another advantage we have over drug court, where drug court forcing folks to come in every week for court, and another time for a drug test. It's tough to keep a job that way. If you're working full time, we're not going to tell you to take off work and come and see ISP. We're going to come to you. We'll give you your test right in your house. We'll do it. If we can't do that, it's not practical. We'll do a swab right in the middle of your work area. We'll go someplace private and do it. We'll come to you. We don't lose track of anyone, and we make sure we see everyone 2 times a week. Build up to regional offices, those who can. You know, if we're in Camden, it's one thing, but if our office is in North Brunswick and you live in Warren, we're not going to bring you to our office that much. We're going to come up and see you. But we will use the regional offices, homework, community service. We'll see you in all of those places. Any questions so far? The good part comes there. Yes, sir.
Do you have, and if so, how many prosecutors, officers object to ISP basically high roads?
You know, most times the prosecutors will not. We do get some objections. We get some from the Attorney General's office, especially in those big restitution cases, and especially if we try to get people out real early. Oftentimes they'll object, sometimes only on the grounds that they should do more punitive time. And we'll take that into consideration, maybe adjourn it for 90 days, so them staying in prison. Some would argue, you know, for some of those clients, day one is a serious sanction for them in prison. And 6 months or 9 months, the point is made. But we do get the objections, and they are put before the panel in writing and orally, that is the objection. But I would say for the most part, prosecutors don't object, but for the most part, we probably don't get back.
Still not taking anybody who has the second-rated offense?
Yeah. We'll talk about that in depth as soon as I finish this. Actually, the last couple of pages of your presentation, a little inside baseball, switchman, of course, football, baseball. And I'll talk you how we make some of those decisions, very specific. So it's not a surprise. And more importantly, it helps you frame your plea negotiations. I'll talk specifically about sex offenders. Some of the statistics, because Judge Grant loves analytics. We had over 94,000 applications received, 21,000 applied, so we're not as competitive as Princeton or Harvard, but we are somewhat selective. 9,400 people have graduated, and right now we have about 1,200 people on the program. We are actually, we did up to 1,450, but as I stated earlier, I can't keep those numbers up. I just can't find enough applicants that fit our criteria in modern prisons. You know, in 1983, there were plenty. Now it's a little tougher. So we'll talk about that again. Maybe you can give me some insight on what I can get a little looser on. Again, monthly community service. 98% of our folks are doing the community service that they are mandated to do. 95% are employed. Now, full disclosure, that means on the last day of the month you work. Some people work part-time, some people work full-time, some people have a full and a part-time job. But 95% of them are working in a given month. And my office is held to very strict standards of how many contacts they make with their participants. And we are at 100% of the minimum. We far exceed the minimum every single month. So we don't let anybody fall between the cracks. If we lost track of you, you're an absconder and there's a warrant out for your arrest. We don't just forget about you for a couple of weeks. My officers work 24/7. If they're not working because they're on vacation, even if they have regular days off, if they're on vacation, a backup officer will take their calls. A participant can call us 24/7, they'll get somebody. And if they need something, we'll go out. My guys work 40-hour work weeks, and I don't care how that 40 hours comes up. If it's 2 hours on Sunday, 5 hours on Saturday, and then they take Friday off, that works for me. It's just responsible for 40 hours, and they need to work when they need to work, not when I think they should work. So there's no Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, and then I'm hitting up for overtime situation. It doesn't work out. So every day we're available. We have text capability, email capability. There's no way we're going to lose track. If you need us, we'll be there. The drug screen, we have people with serious drug and alcohol addictions. We'll test those folks 3 times a week. If you're just a common thief and you don't have all our evaluations indicate you don't have drug addiction or alcohol addiction, we'll test you once in a while just to keep you honest. But obviously, we want to focus in on that more than others. Some of the techniques we use, instant urine cuffs, very cheap, same ones you see in the courthouse when the judge orders a urine test before sentencing, same thing. $5.50 checks for 12, 13 different drugs that are popular, so we go through tons of those. We'll also send labs, urines to the lab. We'll test for things that aren't on those strips, steroids, K2. So oftentimes the person is negative. When you look at them and you're training and experience that this guy's high on something. So then we'll play around with some other testing and we'll send it. Usually lately it's been K2 and some other funky stuff with butane that's been going on right now. So we will check for other things. I have a huge budget for, which now is even bigger, because we switched the instant cup, saving a lot of money. So we'll test for some of the more expensive stuff, like I think steroids, $40 a test. So, you know, we might check for that. Almost done with this. We talked about treatment. We talked about the tough sanctions. Participants who abscond from supervision are pursued by law enforcement, extradited, and we'll try to get escape charges filed. We're not totally successful with that, but we have down south of Atlantic County, that area we call the River Region. We've had some success, a little bit in Camden, 1 or 2 of them but we will try to pursue escape charges if you stop for more than 30 days. And we don't forget, you know, in probation, once a bench warrant's issued, we throw you on a bench warrant case, so that we forget about you, and let law enforcement go after you. In ISP, we will continue to talk to some of the neighbors, talk to some of the family, and try to locate the absconded and bring them back. Remember, we took them out of prison. The judge has adjudicated them as someone who needed to be in state prison. We took them out on our program. Now we lost them. So we take it personally. So we will continue to try to find them. A little bit different than probation. So we talked about the sanctions, incident reports, you know, that's like a demerit, increased curfew restrictions, home detention, short-term incarceration. We talked about all of that. I'm done with this part. Any questions on the presentation? Yes, sir.
Question, if you have a client who is terminated from drug court and receives an alternative sentence, he can't get into ISP, is that right?
There are two tracks that one gets into drug court. There's a controversy that goes on now. Track 1 and track 2 is what the criminal division just call it. If you are sentenced to drug court under 2C35-14, you're ineligible for ISP. If you're not sentenced under that, you are eligible. There's a movement by some of the drug court judges, particularly here in Monmouth, Judge Morgana, who I used to work for, really wants to do away with any opportunity for a former drug court participant to go to ISP. I mean, I understand. Look, when I ran the drug court here, I felt the same way. Now I'm running ISP. Old public administration professor told me once that where you stand depends on where you sit. I'm sitting here now, so I don't feel the same way. But I think legally, I'm correct that there are two tracks. Some of the drug court judges just want an out and out prohibition of any drug court.
Can you give them an example of the other track?
If you're just let's say you're on probation and you violate probation and someone's looking at maybe going to state prison or going into drug court, that would be one. But there are certain findings that the judge has to make in order for it to be under track 1. What I've asked Sue Callahan up in the criminal division is to work with the PJs and ask all the criminal court judges to specifically state on the JOC. So I'm not an attorney. My staff, I have one attorney that works with me only part-time. We don't want to have to try and figure it out whether it's track 1 or track 2. I don't want to aggravate Judge Morgana any further than I have. So I want him to try and put it on the JOC so it specifically states track 1 or track 2. Then we know if it's track 1, you're done. We're not going to even consider you. If it's track 2, we are going to consider you, although I'm told that they've asked Judge Grant to make a policy decision not to allow any drug court to go to ISP, but I suspect that will be, but that's just the first one. Another hand up here.
I was just going to ask a question. If you start from ISP, will we have a consideration when the person's eligible for parole or than hire a person?
I'll defer to parole for the answer, but my understanding is that if you violate ISP, you are still eligible for parole. Now, if they take that into consideration, I certainly would parole. So, if you look at the last couple of pages of my handout that I left up front, one is called the ISP rejection level 1 reasons. I want to let you know how this process works. How am I doing?